The crisp mountain air, usually a balm to my soul, now felt like a suffocating shroud. I scrolled through the photos on my wife's phone, each one a carefully curated lie. Solo hike, she'd called it, the very phrase now a bitter pill I was forced to swallow. She'd been so excited about it, a weekend getaway to the Cascades just to clear her head. "Babe," she purred, kissing me goodbye with a practiced affection that now felt like a brand on my skin. For weeks, things had felt off. A subtle shift in her demeanor, a distracted look in her eyes, the way she recoiled from my touch at night. I had chalked it up to stress, the pressures of her demanding job, a long-simmering worry that always found a way to rationalize itself. Foolishly, I tried to be understanding, supportive, the dependable husband she always seemed to need. But deep down, a cold dread had been growing, a relentless whisper that refused to be silenced. The photos were breathtaking, undeniably so. Towering pines framed jagged peaks that scraped the sky. Sunlight dappled through the canopy, illuminating vibrant wildflowers. She was beautiful in each shot, her face flushed with exertion, a genuine smile lighting her eyes. It was a picture-perfect solo adventure, except it wasn't. One particular photo caught my attention. She was perched on a rocky outcrop, the vast valley stretching out behind her like a rumpled green carpet. In the foreground, tucked away in the lower right corner, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, was a glint of something metallic. It was a watch, not just any watch, but the oversized silver timepiece I had bought for my best friend, Eddie, on his 30th birthday. A wave of nausea washed over me. The world seemed to tilt. The mountain air, once refreshing, now felt thick and suffocating. Eddie, my best friend, the man I'd shared countless beers with, confided my deepest fears to, who'd stood by my side at our wedding. The sheer betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. The realization was crushing, a tidal wave of anger, hurt, and disbelief. My hands trembled as I scrolled back through the photos. My eyes now searched, scrutinizing. I saw more. A barely visible corner of a familiar blue backpack, the kind Eddie always took on his hikes. A pair of hiking boots, a shade darker than hers, partially visible in one photo. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and seemingly innocent, were now forming a grotesque portrait of deception. My blood ran cold. The cheerful facade she presented now felt like a cruel mockery. The affection, the kisses, the promises, all carefully constructed lies. The trust I'd placed in her, in both of them, was shattered, ground into dust. I didn't explode, not yet. I needed to process, to think clearly, to formulate a plan. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. They had underestimated me. When Madison returned that evening, she was the picture of glowing health. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. "It was amazing, babe," she gushed, throwing her arms around me. I needed that so much. I forced myself to hug her back, to feel the warmth of her body against mine, knowing it was all a sham. I wanted to scream, to unleash the fury building inside me, but I remained calm, cold as ice. "I'm so glad you had a good time, honey," I replied, my voice dangerously even. I excused myself, pretending to have work to catch up on. I spent the rest of the evening meticulously planning my move. I knew I had to catch them in the act, to make sure there was no room for denial. I installed a small hidden camera in the living room, focusing on the couch where they always sat when Eddie came over. I needed hard evidence. I needed to see it all for myself. The next few days were a torturous dance of pretense. Madison carried on as if nothing had happened, her interactions with me a strange mix of normalcy and detachment. I, in turn, played the role of the oblivious husband, smiling, nodding, all the while simmering with a rage that threatened to consume me. Then came Friday night. Madison mentioned she was going out with her friends, which I knew was code for a rendezvous with Eddie. I had the camera ready, the footage recording. It wasn't long before I saw the front door open, and Eddie stepped in, grinning like he owned the place. They kissed, a slow, intimate kiss that made my stomach churn. This was it. I burst through the door, the hidden camera still recording. Their stunned expressions were frozen in time. The air crackled with shock. Madison's face drained of color, her eyes wide with terror. Eddie stood there, a deer caught in headlights, a pathetic excuse for a man. "What the hell is this?" I roared, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. Madison stammered, her lies already falling apart. "It wasn't what it seemed. Madison, what is this really?" I spit the words out in disbelief. A casual meetup with friends while I'm out of the house? Or a secret lover's rendezvous behind my back? Who do you think you're fooling? I turned to Eddie, my best friend, the traitor. The betrayal stung deeper than any anger. "You spineless piece of garbage," I seethed, shaking with fury. "How dare you call yourself my friend? You were in my house, eating at my table, sharing drinks from my fridge, all while sleeping with my wife." The disrespect was unbearable. My body trembled with a mix of rage and disgust as I glared at him. Eddie stammered, his face filled with fear. I can explain," he started. I didn't want to hear it. I lunged at him, my fist connecting with his jaw with a sickening thud. He stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. Madison screamed, her hands flying to her mouth, but I didn't stop. I rained punches down on him, fury driving every blow. The anger that had built up over weeks finally found its release. I struck him until he was cowering on the floor, blood trickling from his nose and mouth. I wanted to keep going, to make him feel every ounce of the pain and humiliation he'd caused. But eventually, I stopped, breathing heavily, my knuckles throbbing. "Get out," I growled, my voice tight with anger. "Get the hell out of my house, and never come back." He scrambled to his feet, his face twisted in pain, and fled, tail between his legs. Madison was a broken mess on the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood over her, my heart a hard, cold stone. "I want you gone," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Pack your things and leave."
"Now?"
she begged. She pleaded, promised she would change. But her words were hollow, empty. The trust was shattered, and the love was gone. The images of them together, the lies, those would never leave my mind. I watched as she packed her suitcase, her tears a desperate, pathetic attempt to gain sympathy. As she walked out the door, she turned back one last time, her eyes filled with fear and regret. But it was too late. The bond was broken. All that remained was the cold reality of their actions. The following days were a blur. I filed for divorce, contacted our mutual friends, and shared the recordings of their affair. I exposed their betrayal, making sure everyone knew the truth. I took a strange satisfaction in watching their carefully built worlds collapse around them. I watched as Eddie lost his job, shunned by everyone who knew him. I saw Madison's social circle shrink as friends turned their backs on her. The betrayal had been so complete, so unforgivable, that they would never recover. They would never live this down. It didn't completely ease the pain, the emptiness that had settled deep inside me, but it helped. Seeing justice served, knowing they were paying for their lies and deceit, it was something. The road ahead would be long, but I knew I would heal. I would move on. And I would never let anyone treat me with such callous disregard again. I had learned a hard lesson, but it was a lesson nonetheless. Trust is precious, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair.